Good morning, everybody. What's going on? Welcome back to Movie Mornings. I am your host, Don Martino. Today, we're going to be doing our Marvel for Dummies series, starting with Phase 1. Kind of going back through the phases, kind of explaining how it all began, and just kind of reflecting on what it was like to see the movies at the time, things like that. Just an overall recap with Phase 4 kind of wrapping up here very soon with Black Panther. Wakanda Forever? Wakanda Forever. I couldn't think of the name. With Black Panther, Wakanda Forever wrapping up Phase 4. It'd be fun to go back, I felt like. But look, before we get started, please hit the like button below, subscribe to the channel, leave some feedback in the comment section, share this with your friends, hit the bell for notifications. And I'm not alone today, folks. I also have with me Mr. Jose Espinel. Jose, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, man? I'm good. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited to start going through the phases of Marvel. Pretty big fan, so I'm excited.
Yes,
Can't wait.
that's right. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, as it were, or the MCU, however you want to abbreviate it, is fine. And we also have Mr. David Tresch. David, how's it going?
I am doing absolutely excellent now that we're going to be talking about Phase 1, heading back to my favorite movie ever, Iron Man, the original. Can't wait to get into this and talk about why Robert Downey Jr. is the GOAT.
All right, sounds good. I'm excited too. And I mean, really, it does all kind of start with Robert Downey Jr. to bounce off everything you had just said there, Dave. And to start with, um, we do have Iron Man here at the very top.
Yeah.
So let's start talking about Iron Man. And, I'll start with whoever wants to go first here. I mean, do you remember seeing the film when it had come out? And what was your take on it at the time?
Yeah, I recall watching it, absolutely loved it. This, I believe, was actually the first ever Blu-ray that my family got. Iron Man, the original, was, I think, our very first Blu-ray. But I remember this coming out as a kid. I always loved Iron Man, loved the comics. So when I saw the movie was coming out as a kid, I was super stoked, super excited for it. And as a kid, I couldn't even comprehend it. That's what it was 2008, I think it released. Is that correct?
2008, yeah.
Yeah, it was 2008. I was like 9 years old or so. I liked it as a kid, and then like as I grew up and just kept rewatching it, I loved it more and more, and it blew my freaking mind. And it's funny. I'm looking at the whole phase list here of all the Marvel movies. If you had told me that that Iron Man movie would have led up to all this, I would have called bullcrap because at that point, it's like we had Blade, we had Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man for Marvel movies. There was no continuity, so the fact that it led up to all this and it just started in the MCU with that Iron Man movie is fucking excellent, and it's a great way to go back and just again re-kick off and check out these movies and see where it all began with one hell of a solid film.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Man, directed by the great Jon Favreau, and he really kind of kicked off this whole thing, which is pretty cool. And I really like Iron Man myself. I think it's spectacular. I think it's still one of the best. I haven't done a rank in a while. Like, I haven't gone back to do a ranking in a while. But that first Iron Man movie, without a doubt, is one of the best. I wouldn't have been interested without it. And I could still go back and watch that movie and have an excellent time. The way that Downey played the character, the way that Tony Stark is kind of all laid out for us in that one film, and we understand who he is and why he ends up where he ends up very, very well. It's a really great movie, and for those of you who haven't seen it, I mean, I honestly couldn't recommend it more. And I remember when it was coming out, it was started, like you said, back in 2008. I seen the trailer online. That was back when you used to have to load up trailers on YouTube, like let them actually load for a good long while. And I remember just
Come
being
back
like,
to it.
well, it was one of those things where everybody was talking about Iron Man. They'd seen, at least at the time, it wasn't as easy to go watch things on TV. So everybody was talking about the commercial that they'd seen, or I'm sorry, on the YouTube. So everybody'd seen the commercial on TV and was telling me about it. Like, I remember going to school and everybody was like, Iron Man's going to be good. Like, everybody was like, this looks great. And so I went home, and I think I still probably had dial-up internet, and just remember loading at least DSL. I mean, I just remember having to load the video up and watching it. And Whenever you got a video loaded, it was like an event. So you called your whole family around to go watch this video that you got loaded because you waited
Yeah, you'd go
forever.
yell to everybody. Hey,
Jose,
Dad, I got the video loaded up.
Jose wasn't around at this time, so yeah, I'm just educating him more or less on this. But honestly, and I remember everybody gathered around the computer to watch Iron Man, the trailer, just the trailer, and it was so exciting. I mean, it looked really good. And I remember my mother told me, I had no idea at the time who Robert Downey Jr. was. And I just remember my mother telling me about him and how he was a good actor. And I started to learn more about his past life and how he got into drugs and things like that. And started having a whole education course on Robert Downey Jr. And I remember a lot of the reaction to Robert Downey Jr. playing it, though. There was, once you started gearing up and getting closer and closer to the movie, like nobody really thought Robert Downey Jr. starring film was going to be anything big. I mean, he was known to be a good actor. He'd done great work at the time. He'd already, been through the Oscar, cycle before. I mean, so he was a good actor, but nobody really like understood like how good he was, at least in like mainstream audiences, and everybody was just like, oh yeah, that kid from Weird Science, Robert Downey Jr. is going to be in a superhero film. That's interesting. So nobody really thought it was going to be great, although the trailers made it look great. It was kind of one of those things. But I just remember being excited, went to see it with an ex-girlfriend. I think I saw this movie 4 times in the theater. I loved it that much. Like I just couldn't stop going back to see it. So I really, really loved Iron Man a lot. And it completely blew my expectations out of the water. I have very fond memories of this as a child, and I can't wait. I couldn't wait to get an Iron Man 2. At the time, I remember looking online for what was next, and at the time it was funny because it was Iron Man versus Hulk was like the next slated project, and that never happened now. But that was like their next big slated project that they were trying to nail down. Like Kevin Feige was trying to get Iron Man versus Hulk made to be the direct follow-up to Iron Man. And so that never happened, but it did kick off the cinematic universe. Unbeknownst to me, I wasn't really in this world back then the way I am now. But at the time, I loved the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire. And
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'd seen a couple of the X-Men's and really liked them at the time.
Yeah.
And I might have read a Spider-Man comic or two, but that was when I was still very, very in my infantry, like very young at that time, maybe 3 years old. I was reading a couple Spider-Man infancy, and not infantry. Infantry is a little.
Tom was down there on the
closer
fucking front lines, bro.
Infantry is a little closer to what we witnessed in the beginning of Iron Man. That's a little bit closer. Than that.
Yeah.
Not infantry. I misspoke. I apologize. Infancy.
Good catch. No.
Yeah, thank you. And either way, that was my experience with Marvel. I was a Batman fan. I liked the Michael Keaton one, and that was a DC movie. So I really I'm trying to set up here. I had no prior big attachment to Marvel, nor did I realize that they were trying to build. I don't know if a lot of people did at the time, unless you were really in the know, that they were trying to build a cinematic universe the way that they did. But the movie came out and it was wildly successful. It was obviously going to get a sequel, and I remember just everybody loved it. Everybody loved it. I was hard pressed to talk to a friend of mine that didn't like this movie at the time. Like everybody I knew that went to see it loved it. I went to see it about 4 times. Anyway, I digress. I'll take it over to Jose. Jose, what was your first experience with Iron Man like?
So yeah, 2008. I
Keep talking. I'll be right back. Just give me
Okay.
1 second. Yeah.
Yeah, in Texas, we didn't have the area I lived in. We didn't have a movie theater, so I couldn't go out and watch movies. You'd have to rent from a movie gallery actually, but it was so small that they didn't have any of the Marvel films. So my first time watching Iron Man wasn't actually until I moved here to Georgia, which was 2012. So I had missed out on all those MCU films that had come out for this phase 1. So I remember a friend of mine.
Phase 1 all at once, or
I did actually. I went to a
Oh,
friend's.
wow.
I went to a friend's house, and he had the DVDs for all of phase 1. he told me, "Hey, have you seen any of the movies from Marvel's Phase One?" I said, "No." He's like, "Come over right now. I've got all the whole first phase in DVD. We're gonna binge the entire thing." So I binged all the movies straight, one after another, which was incredible. I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with the MCU like right then and there. And I remember Iron Man, the first Iron Man, just I just loved it so much. The opening scene with and just the entire movie in general was just incredible. And then every single movie after that was just like, wow, yeah, this franchise is gonna go places. And man, do I love it so much. It was great. And I remember going over to my friend's house a bunch of other weekends and just rewatching these movies and rewatching them and just absolutely loving them every time.
It really became like a thing overnight too that just entered our pop culture zeitgeist. Like when it came out, like I know that you hadn't
Yeah.
seen it when it came out, Jose, but I'm sure you remember walking through Walmart and seeing Iron Man clothing everywhere for children.
Oh,
And
yeah. I mean, when I moved here, the Walmarts and Targets and all that were just filled with Marvel Phase One shirts and
Mhm.
pants and hats and figurines and all this other stuff. It was ridiculous, man. It was crazy.
Yeah, and then that's pretty cool, man. I mean, I just like I loved this movie so much, and I remember I didn't know that this movie had a post credit scene until maybe about the time Avengers came out, the first Avengers movie, and it wasn't until then that I actually went back and actually got to see the Nick Fury scene at the end. By the time it was all said and done, to really start to set up the cinematic universe. And man, what a way to start a cinematic universe. You know, we always talk about
Honestly,
these franchises. They have a hard time starting them out. You know, like DCEU. I like Man of Steel personally. I think it's great, but a lot of people didn't, and it didn't do as great as they were hoping in the box office. And you need somebody like Kevin Feige to start this out as a producer. And Disney didn't even own it at the time, by the way. Let's
right?
also
Yeah.
keep that in mind, which was really interesting. But Feige, as a producer, had worked on Spider-Man. You know, he'd worked on, I think, the Ang Lee Hulk movie. That was the other one I'd seen prior to this, like superhero wise, was Ang Lee's Hulk movie, which is not held up very well at all. But at the time, I loved it. But I think Feige even worked on that, and he worked on some of the X-Men movies as a producer, so he knew the ins and outs, the mistakes, and stuff, and where to go. I think in a lot of ways, and I think that really shows here in Iron Man. It's really quite the way to actually start a cinematic universe when you don't have everything sorted out in your head yet. But we always talk about Kevin Feige, and it really takes me back. And it's like, well, that's why he was always kind of 5 steps ahead of himself. He knew where he would want to go. He had it mapped out already, at least in his mind, I'm sure. And he, called up his buddy Jon Favreau to do Iron Man and said, we always talk about the sandbox, right? Here's the sandbox, play in it. And and Favreau got probably the best gig ever, because he wasn't tied to a whole lot at this point. And I think it really complements this movie a lot, the fact that Jon Favreau is one of the few directors, the only director that wasn't really tied to anything. All he really had to do was 2 things: make a great movie, and number 2, put Nick Fury at the end and the post credits, set up Iron Man, but also put Nick Fury at the end. And I honestly, I'm a sucker for a great origin story, and this is definitely one of the best ever put to screen, 100%. And
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
and when you talk about character development and the way that Downey just, man, he's good in this movie. I mean,
He is.
there's no doubt about it. He's fantastic in this movie. And Gwyneth Paltrow was another thing that I think, another actress. I mean, she wasn't really, I mean, she was Gwyneth Paltrow. People knew the name because she was hot, but she hadn't done a lot. The only thing I could think of was Seven with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. She's kind of iconic for that, but she hadn't done like a lot of like spectacular performances at this point. And to have her as the female opposite Robert Downey Jr. in this movie was kind of a sour point, I think, for people. Like there's a lot about this movie, I think, that was kind of riding against it in terms of who was involved. But I don't think I think everybody kind of underestimated the Jon Favreau of it all and the vibe he was going to bring to the direction, and honestly, like how great that would actually be. And Jon Favreau, was in a great position too. He just come off doing Elf, and that was a hit, So it's no wonder Feige hired him to do this, because he really managed to, much like he did with Elf. What makes Elf work is all the characters are so relatable, he adds a relatable spin to that. So he did a lot of the same thing here. It's obviously more action packed, and he really showed he can direct action too on top of that, like in a great way. And I think the other thing that I think is really makes this movie work, when you're a kid, you're not really thinking about it as much, but a lot of this movie, especially when you start to compare it to the future MCU projects that have come out since, it's very grounded in reality. There's something about this movie that felt very grounded in reality. But I think a lot of this is characters first. Another thing we need to bring up, and Jeff Bridges as the villain, he's amazing. I mean, really, he is awesome in this movie. He's always great. He's one of the best actors of all time. So to put him in here in this villainous role, I don't think this is the only time I remember ever seeing Jeff Bridges as a pure villain. Maybe I'm missing something or not thinking of something or blanking on a role he did. But he's menacing. He's awesome. You understand where he's coming from. You really actually do, because we have people like this in our real world. So it's just, it makes it very much it's one of the more relatable villains.
That's a lie.
Why? What?
His name is Obadiah. Who the fuck do you know with the name Obadiah?
Oh, Obadiah. No, I don't know anybody with the name Obadiah, but I'm saying where he's coming from in terms of
yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's development, and he's still menacing. I think he really works in this movie very, very well. Does anybody else have anything to add to this Iron Man?
On that note, I do like him as a villain, and I do hate that people judge him so harshly looking back. A lot of people that look back at Iron Man, and it's funny because it's like when Iron Man came out, everyone that I know, I mean, I was a kid at the time, but still, I never heard anyone talk shit about the original Iron Man film until like 2-3 years ago. People started saying shit to me. I was like, what? What the hell are you talking about? Iron Man is great. Like, if you want to talk about 2, that's a totally different story that we're going to get to in a minute. But the original Iron Man is pretty damn solid. I don't know.
It's still one of the best. It holds up, man. It really does. I mean, that's the other thing, too, is I think that this is one of the first, I mean, right before this, they had the advantage of the Transformers hitting really big. Because Transformers innovated a lot of the VFX. Like, it really did. Like, you say what you will about the movies themselves, they did innovate a lot of the VFX. And I think they really had that advantage of those VFX being at their disposal to where they can really start to make the VFX. This is of the earlier time when VFX, like, they look good. They really still look good, too. Like, they're not bad at all. Like, they're maybe a step above Transformers and 2 steps above Phantom Menace. So
like this next one we're about to talk about.
Yeah, and that's a good segue there, because we're going to get into Incredible Hulk here, which, as I said before, seeing Incredible Hulk, I had at least seen the Ang Lee Hulk movie. At the time as a kid, I really loved it. And this one is really interesting because it was kind of done a little bit more independently, shall we say. It's Luis, I can't remember who directed it. It's Luis something, and I can't remember his last name. I'm feeling terrible that I'm blanking on the name here, because I actually think he's a very talented filmmaker. And Incredible Hulk is interesting because
Leterrier. I butchered that.
Leterrier or something, Luis Leterrier or something like that.
I just looked it up.
Either way, he's a really, really good filmmaker, and I remember this is a very unique MCU project. Well, number one, the lead actor Edward Norton, he never reprised his role in the universe. He never got to come back or reprise his role in the universe. But it also, the other thing that I kind of had in my head, I remember seeing this. I went on a date to see this one too. And
damn,
I only saw
Tom's
this.
out here taking out the ladies to watch.
I did. I actually did go on a date.
He's like, listen, you want to date me? You're gonna have to go watch this fucking movie. All right?
Ironically enough, I had just broken up with the girlfriend I took to see Iron Man.
Oh gosh!
I actually was on a new date when by
Roll
the
the
time
dice on Hulk.
Incredible Hulk came out, right? And I remember I had to explain. I remember understanding this movie a lot more than I thought I was going to at that age, because I remember a lot of the things that happen in the Ang Lee one actually do get carried over here. Like a lot of the story points they even make this opening intro to kind of recap the Ang Lee events, which it kind of plays as a pseudo sequel to the Ang Lee movie, yet it's kind of a reboot at the same time. So it's one of the more unique projects in that way, where it's a pseudo sequel to something that's not even necessarily in its universe, but it also acts as the first introduction to Hulk in this universe. So it's very interesting and unique in that way. And I remember just being so impressed by it, because again, the VFX are so much better than they were in the Ang Lee Hulk movie. Go back and watch the Ang Lee one. It's bad. Everything
It's
about
garbage.
that movie, it's really
It's
bad.
so garbage.
Because the whole movie is, it might as well be Phantom Menace, right? Because the whole movie is trying to, it relies on VFX the whole time. And it's not a slight to Eric Bana's job as Hulk or Jennifer Connelly. I mean, I think they both are very talented and did the best they could in their respective roles, but they also, I think, had a lot of the problem the cast of Phantom Menace had, where they're acting in front of blue screens a lot, and they have a hard time navigating the roles sometimes. And I'm sure the script was fine, and it's funny because Ang Lee is actually a very good director, just he kind of missed on that. But this movie, big step up, right? And I remember just having so much fun, and I remember having to explain to the girl I was with everything that was kind of happening, because it could be confusing if you have no preface about Hulk, honestly, a little bit. But I still think, again, this is one of those movies that's held up very, very well throughout time. I know that a lot of people diss it because it's not Mark Ruffalo, it's Edward Norton, and it's a very different approach.
Edward Norton's better. No, I'm just kidding.
I think so, but that's me. It's a very different approach, but
it's a different Hulk that he got to play too, to be fair. But
yeah.
that's the one that I'm missing, is that World Buster Hulk. But we don't get that now. That's probably the only regret I have that is bittersweet about going back to watch Hulk is the Hulk that I really wanted, and nothing to diss, Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. Mark Ruffalo. Is it, you call him Ruffalo's, isn't his name?
No,
Ruffalo?
it's Mark Ruffalo.
It's Ruffalo, whatever.
Oh.
It doesn't. I've heard it both ways.
Tomato,
I don't
tomato.
trust you
It's
people.
tomato.
He's got Smart Hulk now, and we're transitioning all sorts of back and forth here since the end of phase 3. But to go back to this World Buster Hulk, it was absolutely amazing. And like Dom said, the VFX at this time are freaking excellent. You go back and watch it still today, it looks fucking awesome. The final battle of this one, I remember being fucking awesome.
It's great.
All I wanted to do after watching this movie as a kid was like, man, every time my brothers would fight me, I'd be like, man, he's lucky I don't just turn into the Hulk, grab a helicopter blade, and just start beating the shit out of him with it. Because if I could, I would. But yeah, the final battle in this, Abomination, all of it was absolutely fucking excellent. And that's where you see the best of the VFX too, is where you see Abomination come to life and you see the fucking bone crackling. Oh, that the effects on that were fucking awesome.
Yeah.
This is one that I definitely loved as a kid. Still love now. Edward Norton, I think, is great as a Hulk in this. I remember the post credit, or I don't know if it was the final scene or post credit, but when he's kind of like meditating, his eyes light up green. I went fucking crazy for that shit back in the day. I thought this was awesome. Still love it today.
This movie, actually, believe it or not, does not have a post credit. It's the one.
Okay, it's the final scene then. I was gonna say it felt like a post credit, but I thought it didn't have one. So yeah, it was just the very final scene of him doing the meditation. His eyes light up green.
It does. It is the final scene of him doing the meditation, and then that leads right into the first connection, which is Robert Downey Jr. going in to talk to Ross, and this is the first introduction of Ross, played by the great William Hurt, late great William Hurt. He just passed recently, who was used in many MCU movies throughout time as Ross, and he's very good as Ross. Gets under your skin throughout this entire movie, and I thought Tim Roth also was awesome in this movie as Abomination, and he's back now in the universe, which is great. We'll see him in She-Hulk coming up here, from what I understand, so that's going to be really cool. But Tim Roth, yeah, he's great as Abomination, and I loved his kind of determination. His determination's what drove that character. And I'm not saying he's the best villain of all time. I don't think he's as good as Obadiah in Iron Man. I don't think this movie's as good as Iron Man, to be honest. I mean,
No.
but it's a fun watch, man. I mean, it really is what the movie The Wolverine was to Wolverine, this is to Hulk. And that's good enough for me, I guess. And that's I don't know that we'll ever get this version of Hulk. I'm hoping we do. This type of Hulk in the MCU
nice.
again, but this was a real nice introduction. And I think the plot just it really moves. It's a really good plot, him trying to find the cure. I think it's a really good place to start with Hulk, and it just really moved throughout. I mean, Hulk has the disadvantage of it's not an origin story, as opposed to Iron Man had the origin story, which is great because it does show they are able to do different things throughout the universe. Like, not everybody's going to start with the origin story, so that was nice to set up really easily. Jose, I know you didn't see these when they came out in the theater, but like for this one, do you recall your first experience watching it at least, and what was that like?
Yeah, again, like I said, I binged the entire phase one, all the movies. So it was it was a long night. I think I got to his place at like sometime like 6 p.m. We stayed up like so long. It was like we had a whole like marathon. It was a lot of fun. I remember when I first watching this, I thought, okay, this is gonna be a really cool character. I really liked the movie, and of course, like you guys said, the villain, Abomination. Of course, as always, Stan Lee's cameos are always really cool. I liked Stan Lee's cameo in this one as well.
I can't remember. Was he?
So a drop of Bruce Banner's blood fell into a coffee cup,
right.
And then Stanley drank it. Yeah,
it was his.
I remember
Exactly.
because that made me terrified to drink sodas growing up. And even today, I look at my drink and sometimes I look at it first and I'm like, dude, what if there's like some blood in here? Or like I've seen the pictures of like someone opens up their soda, there's a fucking rat or something. I'm like, ugh, what the fuck? So I'm so skeptical.
I remember having that fear too.
Smell.
I was like, what the hell's going on with the soda factories?
Yeah, I was like,
honestly,
shit, man, I don't believe nobody. My drinks are crap. Now I know what they mean. There's blood in them.
Yeah, I remember my friend and I, when we first watched it the next day, we were both just hella scared to even look at sodas.
Yeah.
Like, we were just drinking nothing but water. And like, our friends would be like, hey, why aren't y'all drinking sodas?
Yeah.
We were both like, bro, just go watch The Incredible Hulk.
By the way, this has one of the best character actors too in this movie, Tim Blake Nelson, and he's so great as Mr. Blue. Remember, because he's having the communications with Mr. Green. Mr. Green's Hulk, the code name that he's using, and they're having this exchange together. And I thought when he meets Tim Blake Nelson, I thought Tim Blake Nelson's sort of obsessiveness with the Hulk himself, it's very funny. It plays very funny, but he's almost like this mad scientist at the same time. And I thought they portrayed that extremely well, much better than his role in Scooby-Doo 2, if you ask me. But I thought he was a better mad scientist in this than he was in Scooby-Doo 2, 100%. But I really had fun with that aspect, and I still do to this day. It's always one I revisit this one a lot more than I think a lot of people do or have given it a chance to revisit. I really do go back to Incredible Hulk a lot. Like, especially if I ever do a binge of these, like, I can't leave out Incredible Hulk. It's too good to me to leave out. And I know a lot of people feel like it's redundant at this point. And sure, it doesn't have nearly as many in-universe connections as a lot of the other ones, but it's not connected, you know? It's still connected.
Yeah.
And so I still love it for that. And I think Edward Norton really gave a good performance despite the, on-set drama that was happening. I thought he did very well. And Liv Tyler's really good in this movie too. She's a really good Betty Ross opposite Norton here. I think that they have great chemistry, and you buy that they have had a relationship before. And the way that she shows sympathy toward him, and actually some of those scenes actually break my heart a little bit when she's showing sympathy toward him. The one specifically when he falls asleep up in the cliffside and she's there with him. Like, there's a real bond between those two in this movie, and you feel it. And I love that everything when the stakes really hit in this movie, and Jose, your screens, we're not ending soon.
What?
We're not starting soon or ending
what just
soon.
happened?
Your screen's bad.
Oh shit,
Okay.
my bad.
All right. So but I love chemistry there, and at the end it always breaks my heart a little bit, and I always feel like what's going to happen just a little bit. Like the suspense is so good when he's in the helicopter and there's a slight chance that he's been cured of the Hulk and he has to jump out of the helicopter and not know what's going to happen. That scene is constructed so well, and the way that she's so upset and just like does not want him to go, and Edward Norton's endearingness in this role is crazy, because he's just, you know, when he's like, Betty, I have to try, you just feel that hero within him, and this man who's struggling between being the Hulk and Bruce. And I think it's a really beautiful movie at the end of the day. Like when you really start to look at it, it's very beautiful and kind of poetic in that way, and I actually do get a little, it brings the emotions out in me. I think it's a really fun time too. The action is very good. It's very good. And there are some scenes where, I mean, gosh, just watching Hulk throw tanks and shit at people, it's so good, man. Because it is the most pure, to me, form of Hulk that we've had, honestly, so far. Where we get to watch him, smash. You know what I mean? So,
especially after seeing that garbage that Dom just made me watch, I was like, Jesus Christ, I need to go watch The Incredible Hulk to wash this off.
Oh, She-Hulk?
Yeah, I went to watch She-Hulk this morning. But...
I really loved it.
Same.
Yeah, but anyway, this is my favorite Hulk movie of the two that we've had. I mean, this is my favorite one. So thoroughly thrilled for this movie. Anything else to add about Incredible Hulk before we move on here, or should we just get into the next one here? So the next one,
right back to Iron Man.
The next one to be released was one I remember being stoked for as a kid, and that is Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 was, once again, directed by Jon Favreau, and I was very excited about this as a kid. Now, funny enough, I did not see this one in the theater. I think I was heartbroken. This is going to sound funny. You're going to tie this together now. I think I was heartbroken because I couldn't find a girl or something at the time.
Oh my gosh, this dude.
So I went into a depressive state. Like, I'm serious. Like, and so I wasn't going to the theater as much at that time. I remember not going to the theater
my guy
as much.
My guy can never side check to take with him to watch these movies anymore.
Second it came out on DVD, I made sure it was a Blockbuster rental. There was still Blockbuster at the time, believe it or not. And I remember renting it from Blockbuster. Second it came out on DVD and watching it, and I really liked it, man. I did not think it was as good as the first. I don't think a lot of people did. I really like this movie. I don't think it's bad. I think it's definitely I think there's definitely a lot of Are you being sarcastic? Or
no, that's people trash Iron Man 2. I don't think
I really
it's
like
really
it
as good as the first. I like it a lot, even if you hated all the plot points of the movie. It gave us so much, and this is where, like, most people didn't know that Iron Man was going to turn into the MCU. Most people definitely didn't think that after the Incredible Hulk. This is the first movie where you start to realize, like, oh shit, things are starting to happen. You get a ton of Nick Fury, you get a ton of Black Widow in this. They really get like really full scenes of them talking about the Avengers Initiative in this. And building a team, and it was fucking excellent in that regard. Plus, we get a much better Rhodey than the original. We got an upgraded Don Cheadle in this one.
Yeah,
and I really actually like Mickey Rourke's villain.
Yeah,
there was great comedic relief in his character as well.
Yeah, and you know, as far as release goes, I mean, they are showing that they are releasing these out of order. It's very clear by the end of this movie. This does come out, or this does take place before Incredible Hulk now, because the idea of the team is really it's brought up in this film, you know, for the first time. And Tony brings that to Ross in Incredible Hulk, right? That he wants to build a team pretty much. So you can actually start to tie the pieces together. So to backtrack a little bit, Iron Man introduced in Iron Man 1, and then all the way in Iron Man 2, we start to learn about the Avengers Initiative through Nick Fury. And once we get that initiative kind of brought to our attention, then it kind of ties right back into it. It ties into Incredible Hulk at the end there, when Tony Stark brings that to Ross and that idea, and Bruce Banner is going to team up with them, hopefully. That's kind of the idea. And what I really like about this ending of this movie, not to jump too far ahead, but what I like about the ending is it does leaves you on this cliffhanger of, because they don't want Tony to be a part of the team as Iron Man. They want him to just be a consultant, and I found that to be a real interesting play because of his behavior and the fact that Natasha, or as they called her Natalie at first, but turns out she was Natasha Romanoff the whole time. She went undercover as his
Natasha Romanoff.
I can't remember what they called her, not as assistant, but something along those lines. They called her, they had a different name for her in the movie. That she was actually really evaluating his personality this entire time, and I thought that was a really cool angle to play. This movie also,
They were just really peeking into who he is as a man, and then just be like, yeah, actually, we don't want you on the team.
he doesn't play well with others, and we don't.
Doesn't he reply with the phrase "You can't afford me"? By the way,
Yeah, he does. He does. He's like, you can't afford me. Yeah.
Oh, excellent move.
But I like the tension that's built between Rhodey and Iron Man in this movie. I think that stuff is really fun. I liked Rhodey getting, this is the first time we're really introduced to the Iron Patriot, right? It was kind of teased in the first Iron Man, right, where he's looking at the suit and he's like, next time, baby. You know?
Yeah, next time. Thank God it wasn't wasted on him.
And so in this movie, we're finally, because this starts to show you how real world Favreau really kept this stuff, because if you got those suits that you have built, the military's going to have some kind of control over it, right? And Rhodey, it makes that very, very clear. Like, you can't just go be Iron Man willy-nilly, you crazy ass drunkard. You have to stay grounded.
It's funny too, because if there is someone who is going to do that and just get away with it and the government can't regulate him, it would probably be someone in the real world like Elon Musk, who's in this movie.
Who is in this movie?
That's an excellent cameo.
Yeah,
he was.
Elon Musk does make a quick cameo, and I think it's so fitting when he does. And
yeah, great for Stark's character too, just diving into it. He's like, yeah, great, we'll talk, and then just walks away from Elon Musk.
Yeah, I don't think Mickey Rourke is nearly as good as Obadiah was in this, but Mickey Rourke still brings interesting elements. I think the real fun to be had in this movie is Justin Hammer. I think Sam Rockwell, they let him play with that, and I think it's so fun to watch. Actually,
such a fun role to watch with him there.
Yeah,
and the scene of him and Tony going to head just speaks volumes as to how they let him play with the character.
Yeah.
and him and Tony in that like courtroom there, the hearing room, was just fucking excellent. Them two acting in that scene, I feel like they just gave them free reign over this. Like, listen, here's what the scene is. You guys go ahead and bullshit at each other.
We get a real development too in this movie for Gwyneth Paltrow's Pepper Potts. He makes her CEO of the company. And they do a good job actually showing you the pressures that she's under throughout the entire time and all the stress she has to go through being CEO now. And I found that stuff to play really well, especially when Tony was kind of pretty much written out of his own company there for a minute and really had to figure out things on his own. And it just really shows how much Pepper has been an impact in his life, because without her, he can't function. He has a hard time functioning on his own. And this movie really dives into that and shows that and develops their relationship in a really great way, I think, in this film as well. And yeah, Justin Hammer, definitely one of the highlights, though. And this also had a recast to it, which is Rhodey. That went from Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle.
That's right.
And I think Don Cheadle's the better one. I'll be honest. I think at this point,
by far,
yeah, I think he does a better job than Terrence Howard in this role. Not that Terrence Howard was bad. I mean, he had some great lines like "The next time, baby." That's one of my favorite Rhodey lines in the entire MCU, and that was done by Terrence Howard. But they did recast to Don Cheadle, which Terrence Howard's kicking himself in the face right now. I guarantee it.
Was it over money? Wasn't it that he ended up leaving?
I think so. Yeah, and I'm sure he's kicking himself in the face right now because I'm sure Don Cheadle's loaded.
Shit.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think he had much faith in where this was all going to go. But honestly, and yeah, I mean, in his defense, is Iron Man 2 as good as Iron Man 1? No, but it still made assloads of money, man. It did really well. And it's a really, I think it's a good movie. I still like it, man. I think it's not as good as the first, but still good, man. It carries the story forward in a great way. I like how they start out with after the cliffhanger. But yeah, go ahead, Jose.
I was gonna say that, and not only in Iron Man. I mean, he was used in other movies too in the MCU.
That's
Not
what I
only just
mean.
those. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Don Cheadle. He's probably made some nice money from
I'm sure.
playing this. And I honestly really do like Don Cheadle's War Machine a lot. I think
Yeah.
he plays a role so perfectly. And I was gonna say too, another scene that I really enjoyed from this movie was the scene where John Favreau's character and Black Widow, where she was like fighting off all those guards
It's a
to
good
get into
scene.
that room. Yeah, loved that sequence. She is just so athletically inclined and just so gifted, and it was just great. I loved it so much.
That and the definitely wasn't this one where we get the Don Cheadle as War Machine jumps in the suit and starts boxing Tony inside.
Yeah. That
Oh,
scene
yeah.
That
is
scene
awesome.
I
That
fucking
scene's sick.
love.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
he starts, I think he plays Queen. And then he's like, "Hey DJ,
Give
drop
me
me a beat while I beat my buddy's ass."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was-
Starts
yeah, that was-
silent.
he says it and he starts laughing. It's so good, man. He
Oh
plays
my
it
That was
so
good.
well.
Yeah, that was
He's
that was
so
during,
drunk.
that was during that party that he was hosting, right? Robert Downey's. It was Tony Stark, wasn't he? He was hosting that party at his place, and they just started fighting each other.
And shit
Yeah.
People ask
shit
me how
went
I
down.
pee in my suit,
Yeah.
just like that.
Yeah. Good scenes in there for sure.
Oh,
Like a
God.
lot of real good comic relief like that. And then I love the fight at the end with Rhodey and Iron Man fighting side by side there.
Oh,
finally.
dude, yeah,
That's
with
it.
Whiplash,
It's
yeah.
really good, man.
Yeah.
It's,
Oh.
Okay.
am I back?
Dom is quiet right now.
Am I back now?
You're
I should be
back, yeah.
now.
Okay,
Sorry
you're
about
back
that, folks.
now.
So I did have problems with Whiplash in terms of the overall execution of that character. I would have liked better development for him, but I do think the scenes containing Whiplash are good. Like I do enjoy, especially when he's out on the racetrack and cutting cars.
Oh,
in
he's
half
just
and
and he's just like whipping. He's just whipping those things like in circles.
That
Yeah,
stuff's good.
That.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And that was the first time when we got to see. I don't remember which mock it is for the suit, but the one in the suitcase where he steps into the suitcase and the suit. That was cool, man. I mean, there's a lot of great moments like that in this movie that are new stuff we haven't seen before, and I think I really liked it for that. It's a good sequel in that regard, and a lot of people really don't like this movie now. I don't know why that is,
Yeah.
but
I will say I
can
do
think of
it's
worse. I can think of worse MCU movies.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I can think of worse MCU movies. I will say for the time, looking at the Phase 1 lineup here, I will say it's probably one of the weaker ones on the lineup here. Well, even that's debatable though. I think Captain
We'll see.
America, for instance, that we'll get to later.
We'll see.
I think it's a good movie, but definitely none of them reached the comedic relief, I'd say, of this one, other than maybe the Avengers.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really good, and honestly, just it does. If that's the one thing I'll credit this movie, like honestly, that I think sets it over the top of a lot of others is that it does try to do new things we haven't seen with Iron Man, and it, yeah, there are weak points for sure. It's not as good. It's not nearly as solid, but as Iron Man, but it's still pretty good. I thought Favreau did a good job directing this one as well. So. But yeah, let's move in to the next one here. And we have Kenneth Branagh's Thor. Now, a lot of people know me. Kenneth Branagh is one of my favorite directors. I think he's great between Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and
Oh my gosh, Belfast. I mean, come on now.
Belfast and I'm trying to think of the Orient Express, Murder on the Orient Express and Death
exactly,
on the
yeah.
Nile, both
Yeah.
phenomenal films. The guy, he's masterful at directing, and I saw this movie very late as well. Honestly, it wasn't actually until Avengers was coming out that I actually finally decided to get around to watching this one. I'll admit that wholeheartedly here, that I didn't see it as early as maybe I should have, but honestly, at the time I wasn't like as into the Branagh thing as I am now, so I didn't really have as much motivation. And again, I was like, I doubt. At the time, we hadn't had anything like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so there was always doubt in me that we really had to watch all these. And then, like, once you see them, you're like, oh, it really does connect. But Thor, at the time, I loved. I thought it was awesome when I saw it. Like, it was... I watched it, I think, more than a lot of these other ones. Now, yeah, it's fine. I think it's a beautiful looking movie. I still think it's gorgeous. I think I really like what this did for Thor as a character. Like, I think it...
I mean, I preferred it to the second one.
Fair, yeah, well, we'll talk about
Everyone
that in a
does.
different episode,
Yeah.
but yeah,
No, but I mean, yeah, this this introduction to
it's
a
fine.
new character, and Chris Hemsworth's first role as Thor. I actually really did enjoy this movie, honestly.
It's good.
What do you
It's
dislike
fine.
about it?
I think it has pacing issues. I think it's very slow. I think a good portion of this movie is
Yeah,
very
I
slow.
can see that.
Mhm.
I really do. I think they didn't. I remembered now. This is the last time I watched it. I remembered him getting to Earth a lot quicker, and I guess he doesn't as quickly as I thought. And a lot of the development is important. And don't get me wrong, Branagh does a good job explaining Asgard and everything like that. I think he does a very good job at that. But I also think it's really slow. It doesn't move as quick as I think a lot of other movies do. I think Hemsworth is amazing in the role, though. I that's one thing I'll never take away from this movie. Like, Hemsworth is awesome in the role. I think Natalie Portman plays opposite him very well when she's there. I think Darcy's annoying though in this movie. I do. I think that she's annoying. I don't think the writing for her wasn't as good. A lot of the comedic stuff, but she's not.
Is Darcy now?
Yeah, I like Darcy a lot better now. I think they've developed her
Same.
better.
So she did in the stuff, even in like WandaVision, I think she was also really good in that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was great in WandaVision. That's where I started to
Yeah.
come back around, was when I saw her in WandaVision again. But
yeah.
I think after my last watch, her writing isn't nearly as strong as I thought it could be.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I think. Yeah, but again, I think it's one of the most beautiful looking movies in the whole thing. I think it's still gorgeous. I really love it visually. I could still watch it. It's watchable. It's not.
If there's one thing that Kenneth Branagh can do is visuals.
He's great at
it. He definitely does that.
And I think he's
amazing.
good with actors too. Like, for the most part, like, I do think the actors are fine. I think like, even Darcy, Kat Dennings isn't a bad actress. Her writing was bad. The writing for that character was bad. I think she's fine in the movie. I think the writing is annoying. It's not her performance so much. And
I honestly love Loki, Thor, and Odin so much in this movie that can make the whole movie for
the
me.
Loki,
Yeah.
In
True.
this one, Loki is just so solid in this.
Loki's great in it. Yeah,
the struggle between the two of them, the seeing Loki start to pull the strings behind the scenes and
Mhm.
do things extraordinarily selfish, and you get a really good read on him in this movie in terms of like he does not necessarily look up to Odin as a great father. He does love his mother more than anything in this world. And he's willing to betray his brother for the greater good of himself because he feels robbed of an opportunity and robbed of a life.
I mean,
You get that really fucking well in this
You do.
movie. It's funny. The only thing I have an issue with Thor in this movie, I think his acting is absolutely amazing. I like that he turns into this entitled crybaby and is just punished by Odin. Like, that part of the movie is excellent to me. The fact that he actually has to humble himself and learn to be worthy. That was a great plot point. My biggest issue in this one, believe it or not, is that I think, and Chris Hemsworth, please forgive me, I think he looks ugly in this. He is way too fucking blonde. His eyebrows are too blonde. His hair is too blonde. He's in amazing shape.
he's very blonde in
Don't
this.
hurt yourself. But he's so blonde in this. He looks albino to me, and I don't.
He's very
like that.
blonde.
It's fucked up.
Yeah, I don't know if you can ever make the guy look ugly, but he is very blonde in this movie. That's
I mean, I was gonna say,
when I go back and look at this,
compared-
I'm sorry, he looks ugly.
compared to now, obviously.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
because
Compared to
he's a
now.
lot. Yeah, he's been playing this role for what 10+ years. So I mean, obviously, compared to now, he is a god. Like, he looks sexy as hell. But I mean, yeah, obviously compared to then, he's way younger. So
yeah.
he's not gonna look as good.
While this movie is very visually good, I can find it to be a little much, like a little bit overly vibrant at times too. Like, I think that sometimes it plays way too much into the vibrance of it. And I get that they wanted to make Asgard this spectacle, but I think a lot of this stuff can just look overly vibrant when you're looking at it from time to time, like the colors and things like that. And I don't hate the movie. Again, I just think that when I think, again, sometimes with the visual effects, like we've talked about this on the show for damn sure, sometimes people try to reach beyond the capabilities of what they have, and it's always great to innovate, but sometimes this movie does that just from time to time. But honestly, it's a good, like, I agree with Dave on most of his points here, though. Like, it sets up one of the best villains in the MCU in Loki very well. It tells that story very well in a way that everybody can really understand. But
Oh, and he's cut off again.
And you're cut off again.
Oh,
Oh,
and
man,
you're-
you're
and
right
you're
back.
back.
Go
All
ahead.
right, sorry. And the arc
Last
for
second
Thor,
there.
and the arc
There
for
you go.
Thor is fantastic. Like he has this really great character arc that you could follow, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things to me. It's just kind of there. It's just it's there and nothing else. Like it doesn't go out of its way to do much more than just what it needs to do. It doesn't feel like
it's a filler movie.
Hmm?
In a way. What?
What's that? No, what was
So
your
that
comment?
so it's like a filler movie in a way.
A little bit. It just feels a little bit
Yeah.
like it's there to connect some pieces, and that's about it. And again, it's a great introduction to Thor. I'm not taking that
Oh, yeah.
away. It
Well, and
is.
yeah, and Loki too, and you get to follow his story and adventures too, going from a villain to almost of like an anti-hero, because he's not good, he's not bad, he's like almost in the in between.
Yeah.
It's just selfish.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he is the god of mischief after all. So
Yeah, and well, the setup for Loki's just excellent, and obviously, I'm gonna just save the rest for the last one here. Obviously, out of him.
Yeah, no, for sure.
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good movie, and somebody else in this movie. Oh, well, we get introduced to Hawkeye for the first time in this movie too.
Oh
Jeremy
yeah, because he
Renner's-
gets yeah.
You almost thought about fucking up Thor there, dude.
Yeah, he did.
You did?
You almost thought about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And last second, which I thought his scenes were good, and I did enjoy watching Hawkeye in this movie. I think that's actually one of the best sequences is Thor going back to get his hammer. I think that plays really, really well. That's one of the more, it plays very dramatically in a great way. And the other thing I got to point out about this movie that I think stands above I think all the MCU movies we talked about so far though, is the score. The score is amazing for this.
Yeah.
It's so good. And I couldn't imagine this movie without the score. And I don't think they use that theme enough for Thor in future projects. I think they've kind of stepped away from that with Taika Waititi's more soundtrack style over score, which is fine. That's what he does. But I wish they used the Thor theme a lot more in the movies, and we don't get it
Here
enough
and
anymore.
there, yeah.
It's very, very rare because I do think the score stands above the rest of the movies we've talked about today in this. I think it's very good. And then one person we haven't talked about who's been in at least two of the movies we've talked about is Agent Coulson, who's a great character. And they've done a good job building him. And I think some of his best stuff in phase one is in this movie, for sure. I think he's great in this one, and you really do get more of a sense for him. And he plays very, very fun in this, and I like that his attitude is kind of, he's playing along with a lot of things. He knows more than he leads on, and you start to get that in this movie. Like that Coulson's a guy who knows more than he leads on, but he kind of has to play cool a little bit too at the same time. And so I really enjoy that. But because these characters, they really think that they're kind of one-upping him or they have one on him, but they really don't at the end of the day. Like he does know what's going on. He's a lot more in the know, and I like the way that he plays in the MCU a lot. So I thought that was a really good thing. Do you guys remember your first impressions of Thor when you first saw the movie? Or
Yeah, I really did like it. That's one of the things that really spoke to me. Was again like the brotherly feud between Thor,
Mhm.
Loki. I love the acting. I did like a good bit of the humor. I don't think it was like the funniest one, but I do remember seeing when Thor first comes to Earth and has to like deal with being there. I remember a good bit of humor, especially with him like smashing the beer bottle in the diner. And they're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, bro?" That small adjustment period was fun, and yeah, just overall, visually it was beautiful. The score was great. The action was great by the end of it. It told a really good story, and yeah, my first impression of it was that it was pretty damn awesome.
yeah, mine too. I loved it the most out of all of them at the time, and it's gone down, unfortunately. Oh, one more thing we got to mention. Anthony Hopkins, one of the best actors of all time, is in this movie as Odin, and he's great as Odin.
Oh
in this
yeah,
movie.
100%.
And
Checks the shit out of Thor in this movie.
this kind of leads to another one of my issues with the movie is I think Renee Russo is a great actress and she's great in the role, but I don't think she's as good opposite Anthony Hopkins Odin. And I think that if you have to choose between one of the other of those two actors, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go Anthony Hopkins as Odin. He's so essential there, but I think Renee Russo is doing her best. I don't think the chemistry with her and Anthony Hopkins they could have picked somebody better for it to play opposite him. I think in this, and that was another one of my problems after rewatching it. Especially, I don't like Renee Russo in the role as much, but she's been stapled in it, so we're gonna accept it.
That
And
kind of fits in with Viking culture, though. You know, like your dad's an
True.
asshole to you and beats the shit out of you, and then you go talk to your mother. She's like, "Listen,
Mhm.
here's some soup. We're gonna relax and hang out.
That's
Your dad
true.
is abusive. It's okay. He beats me too. We're gonna get over this."
yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
true.
not wrong.
And
Yeah.
she's not in the movie
I see
a
what
lot,
you're saying though.
but
Their chemistry isn't great, but that is a little bit a part of their relationship.
Yeah,
I think
maybe. I don't think
overall, yeah.
individually any of them are bad performers. I think they're both excellent performers, and they do
Yeah.
their best, honestly. And yeah, I mean, Anthony Hopkins is one of the greatest actors of all time. I mean, and
Oh yeah,
the fact
without a
that
doubt.
the fact that they got him for this is a big win for the MCU, especially at the time. I think that
Shit, and it's a big win for his pockets as well.
And in this one, I mean,
Much so.
he just kills it. Every role he's in, from the fatherly figure to this scene where
Yeah.
Thor and Loki are young, and
great.
he's really inspiring them and letting them know one day one of you will rule Asgard and be king. And the scene where he drops in and he's saving Thor, and Thor says, "Father, we'll fight them together," and he's like, "Quiet, boy." I mean, he is really fucking convincing in that role, and I don't know how he does it. But in his acting in that small scene, I remember loving it so much because when he's standing there on the horse looking at the frost giant and talking to him, he looks like he's trying to be menacing, but also you see a little bit of like quiver in him because he is an old man. Like he's ready to fight, but also does have a little bit of shake to him there, and you can see his age.
Because he's like, bro, he's
when
like,
the frost giant says it, you see it.
He's like, bro, this could be my last day.
Yeah, absolutely. Jose, what was your first impressions when you watched Thor? I'm sure you watched it all in the same binge, but
yeah, honestly, I remember when I first watched this movie, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this movie, it was one of my favorites of the ones that we've already mentioned and that I had started watching in the binge. It was one of my favorites. I remember really falling in love with Thor and Loki's characters and their struggles as sons of Odin. And I remember kind of being scared of Anthony Hopkins' Odin just because of how it kind of just gave me like flashbacks to my childhood and how strict like my dad was to me. So like I remember just being so scared of his character and how convincing he actually was through his acting.
Yeah.
And just thoroughly enjoyed the action in this. Like you said, the score was just phenomenal. My favorite of the three other movies for sure. And the actors, they're acting just so convincing and
the
so
three
strong,
of
honestly.
which movies?
Oh, the other three that we've talked about already.
Oh, this is your favorite of all of them?
The score.
Oh, the score. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the score. Yeah.
This
was when I first watched these. The Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, and this one. This was one of my favorites of those of these four movies we talked about. This was one of my favorites, just because overall as a movie, I just really enjoyed.
So where are you at with it now? Like that over time? Like have you?
Yeah, it's probably down there lower in of these phase one movies for sure. Probably not last, but it's definitely down there.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, for me it's definitely it's down there for me too. I agree with you. I don't like it nearly as much, but
I don't know why. Just Thor movies. I mean, it's no hate to the actors or anything. I just don't know why Thor movies just don't really come across that well.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
It's
like Thor is better in my opinion in movies that aren't solely based on Thor.
I kind of agree with that. Yeah,
like his solo movies they're not horrible. They're just not the best.
That's been my consensus.
He's better like the Avengers movies, Civil War, like those movies. He's just better in movies that aren't solely based on his character.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about that in future episodes too, because once we get through these phases, and there's going to be a lot more commentary on Thor as a character, I'm sure, because he does go through quite the evolution throughout the MCU for sure. Yeah, man, I mean, this was really like the big one, because it sets up so much about the MCU that we need to know. Like there's a lot of information here that you need in order to go through the rest of the MCU.
Really, these
phase one.
I was gonna say these phase one movies really just set up everything for the MCU. That's really what these movies did, and that's why this phase one is that's the importance of these phase one movies is huge.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I think though too, the other great thing about this one is it takes place after everything, except for Avengers. Like this is chronologically, this would come right before Avengers. Chronologically,
Right.
that's the other
Yeah,
great thing
right.
about this one, and so I love that kind of. I think it works. If you watch this and Avengers next to each other, I love that they work together so well. Like the two
Yeah.
movies. Like we'll get to that here in a minute. So for me, one of the things, like, it's funny because I know like people are going to be saying like, why are you guys going back to phase one and reanalyzing it, and like, because I am going to call this video like Marvel for Dummies. Like that's going to be on the thumbnail, and it's going to be Marvel for Dummies phase one. I know like a lot of people
you should put those, the books that are like things for dummies. You should put like,
with the big eyes that look like this.
yeah, you should put that book on the thumbnail.
I might put that image from the book. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
got
just like crop like MCU on it.
Yeah, I'm sure people are going to be
just
like,
put Jose's face on there. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Hey.
Right. I'm sure people are going to be like, though, like everybody's in the know already. And like, that's not true at all. Like, I know plenty of people. I actually know people who listen to this podcast that aren't in the know on some of this stuff. Like,
I know people who haven't seen like most, if not any, of the MCU films. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
They're like, oh,
I just showed these to my fiance like 2.5 years ago.
I just like those, and I asked those people, why haven't you seen them yet? Like, oh, it just doesn't seem like Marvel films are my thing. I'm like, well, you haven't watched a single one. Why you can't say this unless you've watched at least one. Like,
so I'm hoping the goal is hopefully to get people more interested. I know we've spoiled a lot, but maybe that's what it's going to take to get some people more interested in starting.
They haven't seen them by now. That's on fucking.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah, is true.
But maybe that's what it'll take to kind of start talking about some of these plot lines and things, and be like, yeah, maybe that will pique some people's interest, because, and one of the things that I want to bring forth with all these, and I think we have, is they are so very character driven, and a lot of these characters do come off relatable. I have problems with this movie, but character typically isn't really it. I mean, with the exception of Darcy, I don't really have a lot of issues with a lot of people in this. I mean, the main characters are not the problem with this movie, and they've done a great job throughout the entire phase one so far, kind of going through that. So let's get to this next one here. Speaking of big characters, Captain America, the first Avenger. So I watched this the same day I watched Thor for the first time, and when I watched this one, I didn't like it so much. I don't know why. And this was directed by directed by Joe Johnston, and Joe Johnston, which is very interesting for our Star Wars fans. He worked on A New Hope, and wasn't a director at the time, but has now grown to be a director. And Joe Johnston, I actually almost see a lot of the George influence in this movie when I watch it. Like there's some things I'm like, yeah, that came straight from Lucas, and you could see like he learned a lot from George working alongside him on A New Hope, but in the VFX department mainly. But I think that him directing this movie is a very good option, and honestly, this is I really love this movie now. Every time I go back to rewatch it, I have a great time with it. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a great introduction to Captain America, or Cap. We call him Cap now. We're on that basis, but I think it's a really good introduction to him, and I like the war setting of it. I don't think visually, this is another one where visually though doesn't hold up as well as a lot of these other ones. I think there's a lot of things visually that don't hold up as well. I also think that there's a lot of campiness in this one. I do. I think this one has a lot of campiness, and sometimes the campiness is so overblown it just doesn't work. Sometimes the campiness does play into it very well though. Like there are times that I do enjoy the campiness of it. Like it feels like it's in this World War One, right, setting, or World War Two setting.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. World War Two setting. But it's also
he's not that old. Come on now.
But I don't know. But the setting of it it feels like an artificial setting to it. There's something about this movie that makes it feel artificial, and like I said, sometimes that works. Sometimes that really works for it, and it really kind of helps it pop a lot more. But on other times, you're like, yeah,
they pushed it as far as it would go for sure. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Is this looks like Child's Play in the World War II theming of it? It looks like Child's Play because they just no offense, they don't have the balls to do what X-Men did, and was just like, nope, Magneto was at a camp, he's Jewish, and this is what the Nazis did to him. So they didn't get too deep. I mean, that being said, I do think it works still, just for the fact of from Captain America's perspective, you don't need to get that deep.
You don't.
So that's the thing. I mean, he's frees all the prisoners. We don't need to go into what happened to all those prisoners. And I will say it is pretty dark still, nonetheless, when he does say Bucky. I will say that scene specifically is pretty fucking dark when he goes and finds his friend and he's just all sorts of fucked up in the head, obviously, and he's half awake, basically. I mean, you don't have to see anything, but just the insinuation of what the fuck they did to him looked pretty fucking rough in that scene.
Yeah.
And definitely where the campiness doesn't play for me is the only spot where I really didn't like it, because I even did like the parts of him like trying to, sell not bail bonds, war bonds and everything. I thought that played
fun.
well, but
that stuff's really
that stuff's fun. But the villain in this one, Red Face, not the worst villain, but just
I agree with you.
I think he does come off pretty campy. Yeah, it's not. There's good aspects of him, but he does come off pretty campy, and a lot of the visuals around him did not look very good.
And I hate to say it too, because Hugo Weaving himself is a terrific actor and almost everything he does, but this one, I don't know what they were going for with that performance. Like, and I'm sure he acted the way he was directed to act, right? And I'm sure that was it. But you're right, Red Skull is not good.
Called him
Red Face. I was about to say, I was like, Red Face.
Might as well. He doesn't feel like
true.
Red Skull. Like, he just feels like
it's a. Yeah, I mean, he's.
I mean, as I say,
just appropriating red culture. He's wearing red face in this.
Yeah, I was
one. Basically what he did.
Comparing this Red Skull to the one we got in I was
gonna say
Endgame,
like
that's much better
though.
And that Red Skull was killer. Actually, oh my god, dude, I got chills when I saw that. Oh my goodness, that
scared
the hell out of me.
That is the biggest problem with this movie. With the real strong villain, this movie could have soared a lot more. I think. I mean, still did well when it came out, made money, and still did very, very
hasn't
well.
Really every MCU film really has.
Yeah, I mean they've all been successful to some degree or another, but like it still made money. And I think without some of the campiness, it wouldn't have done as well. So I kind of agree with Dave there. Like I think it complements the movie and more than it doesn't complement it. But then there's times, but I'm a big believer. Typically, this is one exception to that the movie is only as good as its villain. Like that's something I believe in, but. When you look at this villain, yes, it bogs the movie down a lot, but I would make an exception in the sense that...
Oh, and he's gone again.
You're gone. It's all good. Though.
And you're back. And you're back.
Anyway, I would say that this movie, in this case in particular, it still turned out to be a pretty damn fun movie, even with the bad villain. Even though the villain does.
I think it has probably the most killer setup and origin story of any of them. I mean, this just really speaks everything. Every time that someone like. The newer Captain America movie would come out or Infinity War would come out, all you would see on any social media was people doing the snippets of all the best scenes of this movie, Captain America, and showing his upcoming and, showing the early signs of who he is at heart and his character. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times after this movie that me and my brothers were fist fighting, and I was just looked at and was like, I could do this all day. And then they actually knocked me out, but that's... The amount of times that I did say I could do this all day, him jumping on the grenade, all that stuff was fucking amazing and still speaks volumes to his characters up until the very last day that we got to see Steve Rogers.
Facts.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that's true. I mean, there's a lot of like iconic areas to this movie like that. Ooh.
Oh, well. I mean, you're
Dom, you're out again. But when I saw this one, I don't actually remember where I saw this one. I do remember seeing it on Blu-ray. I may have just seen this one on Blu-ray. I was really psyched for it. I was running around. And I thought I was Captain America. I was kicking some ass over here. But Jose, do you remember where you were when you saw this? You were doing the full rewatch, right? So I was doing the full Thor.
I was doing the full marathon first time watch with my friend. Yeah, I remember I was sitting on his couch in his house. He had this like flat screen TV. We popped them into the DVD player and just binged all 6 of these.
And what was your initial thoughts on this one?
I absolutely. I think this one was probably my favorite, one of my favorites, next to Iron Man. One of my favorite character development movies that I had watched at the time. I really liked watching Captain America's from being this skinny, not so strong army dude to becoming this super strong motherfucking Captain America.
Yeah, I mean,
it was amazing.
it kills it in that regard.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what saves the movie for me and still makes us rewatchable despite how bad Red Face is. Is I mean, Steve Rogers just acting, the character development, the building of the character itself
Mhm.
was so
Yeah.
strong in
Okay, it
this.
should be
That's the
good
only
now.
thing I go back and watch. Yeah, Dom is
Yeah.
back here.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry about that, guys.
One thing I was gonna say, I don't know, this has to do with Captain America. I don't know if you guys saw, that Kevin Feige confirmed to Captain America lost his virginity to, in canon.
Yeah,
No.
it's the blonde at the World's Fair.
And guess who that is?
That's
It's Peter Quill's grandmother.
yeah, it's Peter Quill's grandmother.
Yeah.
I don't
It was
well,
Kevin Feige said so. Kevin Feige said so.
no, that
He
was
said in an interview.
James Gunn was the one that made the connection of, well, yeah, it was Peter Quill's grandma and confirmed it. Kevin Feige confirmed that that's who he lost his virginity to, but James Gunn is the one that was like, yeah, that's Peter Quill's grandma.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He basically said sure to it, so I don't know how canon it is, but
Yeah,
when I saw it, I was like, oh shit.
Anyway, so yeah, sorry for all the technical issues, by the way, folks. We're working on it, but yeah, man, I think that this movie, it still holds though. I like watching it. It's another one, like, I can't binge it without it. Like Thor, I can almost skip, even though it's a great companion piece to Avengers. Like I'm always a little bit hesitant to watch it in the binge. I do if I binge them, but this one not so much. I have more fun with this than I did Thor, so I'll at least say that much. And I definitely, again, I think without this movie, I mean, the Captain America trilogy is one of the best trilogies in comic book history.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
So comic book movie history. So I
yeah,
really,
Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man.
I really think that this is a
Fuck,
good.
is so funny.
I really think
no,
this is a good
you're
start.
actually right.
Oh, I disagree. But
Oh wow.
Fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you.
take 3 out of there. We're good. But in terms of
Fucking
What
what?
you mean? It's the best one. What you mean?
2 is the best one easily.
Better hope Toby doesn't hear you, bro.
100%.
He's
Maybe he agrees though.
He's after you, bro.
Who knows which one? Who knows which one's his favorite?
But this one also, I think, has an advantage, though. I think Joe Johnston had a big advantage in First Avenger, where he almost wasn't tied to a whole lot either, because this one takes place before everything. So the only thing he really had to do in terms of connecting things, I mean, he did a very good job, though, with a lot of different connections. I mean, Howard Stark being one of the big connections, played by Dominic Cooper. Dominic Cooper's a great Howard Stark, by the way, in this movie.
He kills it.
I love him in this. Yeah,
Kills it as young Howard Stark.
I love the relationship that him and Steve have in this. The way that they're Steve is kind of jealous of him because of Peggy, and I think Haley Atwell is fantastic as Peggy Carter. I really couldn't see better casting for that. Casting in any of these movies has not really been an issue. It's pretty amazing.
They know who to cast.
Casting
for what
has
role.
been nailed pretty astoundingly, and I really loved. Also, I mean, it's a small role compared to some of his others, but Bucky, I can't think of his name, the actor Sebastian Stan. Very good casting for Bucky, and the way him.
You mean the next Luke Skywalker? I'm just kidding.
Maybe
I would be down.
Yeah, exactly.
Same.
He looks
Honestly,
a
same.
lot like Mark Hamill, but he's got a very. He does very well in this movie for the little time he's there, and Hugo Weaving is not bad casting. He's one of the best actors of all time. So you get Hugo Weaving if you can get him. Just don't direct him to act the way that they do in this film. But the big connection is at the end when he wakes up in the future and Nick Fury comes to him, and that's really the only place that Joe Johnston, I feel like, was kind of tied to anything. So
I ain't gonna lie, I'm a bitch. This movie makes me cry, dude.
Oh, same, bro.
When he wakes up and he goes, "I missed my date," I'm like, bro.
Yeah.
Or no, I missed my dance. Shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, when he's dying, it's very well done too. By the way.
Yeah. And the final moments is killer.
The other great casting in this movie is Tommy Lee Jones, who makes me laugh multiple times throughout this film. I think he's so good.
Fucking kills.
So good in this. Yeah.
I don't know what his rank would be, but like
I can't think of it.
The military, let's call him a sergeant. We'll pretend he's bigger than a sergeant. He's probably like a captain or admiral, general. Well, it's one of those things, right?
Yeah, I love when he's just like, you and I are going to have a conversation later that you're not going to enjoy. I like that one a lot. That's one of
So-
my favorites for sure. He does a great job in this movie. He's funny, and the I'm not gonna kiss you. I mean, line kills every time. It's one of the funniest lines in this whole movie. Yeah.
Oh man.
So great cast all around. I think again the Hugo Weaving is the only problem. And so
And before I forget it, by the way, the young Howard Stark in this is the only reason that you understand Captain's character later on in Civil War, in my
Sure.
opinion.
I
If
agree.
we didn't see their connection there, their understanding, you wouldn't understand.
It's true.
And you don't understand Captain America in this movie. You don't understand why in Civil War when Robert Downey Jr. is yelling at him, "That's not your shield. My father made that shield." To
It's
really
so
Oh, dude,
essential
that's
to it.
yeah,
to
that's,
drop it,
oh yeah,
and how much it
100%.
really meant to him to drop that shield.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very essential to that movie. Actually, you're not wrong.
And Tommy Lee Jones's character was a colonel. Just looked it up.
Thank you. Yeah, but I
Uh,
named every single fucking military rank
then-
other than colonel.
Who's the gentleman that kind of gets him in? Who recruits him? Because he's great too in this movie.
Oh, the
for
scientist.
Yeah, what's his
The
name?
German
Oh,
scientist in this
oh,
movie is
yeah,
fucking
he's the
killer,
one-
dude.
He's the guy who's
So
also in.
good.
He's the one who's in Kingsman as well.
Right, but he's
Stanley Tucci.
Stanley Tucci, the Tooch. Yeah,
The Tucci, yeah.
Stanley Tucci's awesome, man.
Oh, he's
He's
phenomenal.
killer in this.
Yeah.
Except for Transformers 4. I mean, he's great in everything I see him in. And,
I was gonna
and-
say because in Kingsman he's amazing,
yeah, he was great in this, and he
and in this
did-
too, yeah.
Yeah, he's so good in this movie for the little time he's there. Actually makes a real impact and a character that's very likable almost from the get go.
Yeah,
So
Dr.
I
Abraham.
really liked, Dr. Abraham. Thank you. I really liked Stanley Tucci in this. I thought he's kind of one of the unsung heroes of this movie because he's bringing
Country
Cap,
Road.
he's bringing Cap into this like whole new world, and he really is kind of, if you're watching
A whole
this,
new world.
if you're watching this first,
Fuck up.
if you're watching this first in the lineup, and you can, he is kind of our introduction to this sort of whole new world of the superheroes, right? And I think that
Right.
he's so great in that way.
I mean, it's
so.
called the first Avenger for a reason.
100%. So yeah, this movie is stellar. I'll watch it anytime. I recommend it highly.
Yeah,
if you haven't seen it yet. So
Really good one.
yeah, let's get to
The final.
the big
That's
one.
where red face.
The
big one,
final
Jimmy.
one. Yeah, the big,
When we
the
were
big and
gonna-
final
about-
movie of Phase 5
We're talking about Avengers.
or Phase 1. Yeah,
Avengers is look
Avengers assemble. Ah.
directed by Joss Whedon, who I think had a real hard task at the end of the day when it came to this movie, and nailed it.
I mean,
Just
yeah, it's just the amount
Nailed it.
of characters you had to direct in this movie.
I mean, this was
It's
Theater?
ridiculous.
There was fights breaking out in my motherfucking movie theater for
Yeah.
this movie. People were literally screaming and yelling and ready to throw hands. One person talked when the lights dimmed, and people were about to get fucking ejected. I mean, the movie theater was lit for this fucking movie, to
Yeah.
say the least.
And rightly
not
so,
necessarily
honestly.
during the movie, but like before and after, dude, people were so fucking hyped. I was so hyped for this movie. I've been waiting for this. I felt like my whole fucking life. I got my whole family to go with me. I convinced my mom and dad to go, and then they got tickets for me and all my brothers. I was like, let's fucking go, dude. And this movie was just fucking incredible to watch in theaters. I want to see a re-release of this or a dollar screening somewhere.
Yeah.
Bro, an IMAX release.
I still think that this is one of the best comic book films of all time. I'll never forget seeing it for the first time.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, really,
This
it
was
still stands.
This was my most anticipated when I went to go to my friend's house to watch the Phase 1 movies. This was my most anticipated one. And oh my goodness, man, I enjoyed. This was probably my favorite one from Phase 1 too, honestly. Like, this movie was phenomenal.
It was exciting, man, because it was this big crossover event, and nobody really knew how
Of
it
all
was-
the characters that we've seen in these Phase 1 movies,
Yeah,
crossing
and-
over together, yeah.
and nothing like this had ever really been done on this scale, and it was
No.
pretty huge at the time, especially. And I remember I was in Florida when this movie
He was,
came
he
out.
was with a girl at the movies. I'm just
No, I was in Florida when this movie came out, and I really wanted to go when it opened, and nobody else in my family wanted to go, so we didn't go. That was one thing I wanted to do, was go see Avengers. So my best friend
You should have
James,
just gone by yourself.
Bastards.
my best friend James, that called me when I was in Florida. He was like, "When you get back, we're going to see Avengers." I was like, "Is it really that good?" He was like, it's the best comic book movie I've ever seen ever. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, so I mean, we got in the car as soon as I got back, or I went to pick him up, and we actually went to the drive-in movie theater to see Avengers, and it was a really cool way to experience it. And I just remember just being blown away by what I just seen, and it felt like a moment in time when this came out. Like it really felt like a moment in time that something had changed in the world when this came out. You know, there was something new.
One of the most killer things about it, which got everyone excited for the next phase and the next, you know, movie of them all coming together, was I'm looking at the poster right now, and it just reminded me, every single character that I see on this poster right now, at this point in time, they were at their absolute fucking best. Hawkeye, Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, Nick Fury. Every single character was better in this movie than they were in their own movies that they had.
100%.
Everyone was killing it. Everyone's characters on point, and the division of all the characters played so fucking good.
Even Loki's. I mean, Loki's was his character too. I absolutely loved Loki in this movie.
To me, this is damn near perfect, this movie, and it still holds up to me that way till this day.
100%.
I've never. I mean, this is one of the best comic book movies ever made. And
this was also our first introduction, if I'm not mistaken, to Kobe Smolder's character.
Yeah, it was. I think I don't think she'd been in the other ones. Maria Hill. So that
Maria Hill,
and she does very well in it, and as Maria Hill. And there's really, I mean, we're not going to talk about casting on this one because we've already talked about the casting. They
never got it down. They never miss. They always know who to cast for what role. Honestly,
but the fact that all these movies, or all these characters from all these movies with different directors, different creative styles, came together and had the chemistry the way they did in this movie. That's astounding to me. And that doesn't happen very often, where you get something like that that's that damn good and that it works that well.
And there's just
surprising.
There's just so many epic scenes in this movie too. It's just oh man, like Hawkeye jumping off the building and, you know, shooting that arrow into the building and saving himself, like that shit was sick. We have a Hulk. I mean, that makes me laugh every time.
Yeah. Well,
that scene is just hilarious.
This is one piece of casting we can talk about now that you've brought it up, is Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. That was the new addition because Edward Norton had played him previously, but
I loved.
We still pick up with him right where we left off, pretty much, in Incredible Hulk, though. I mean, he's still out where he was at, and Black Widow has to go find him, and I think that stuff plays really well. The immediate chemistry that Mark Ruffalo and Scarlett Johansson is really fire, man, and it really builds. I mean, it really sets up for future stuff with the two of them, and I think that they work together so well. And I like this aspect of they were really bringing him in to be the doctor, right? To be what,
right? Yeah,
Dr. He was Bruce really Banner, being brought in to be a consultant, and Tony at first even is still the consultant, but eventually, you know. I love the scene too. It's iconic. Where put on the suit. That's one of the best scenes in the whole thing, right? And with Cap and Tony where they're fighting, and he's like, "Let's go a few rounds. Put on the suit. Put on the suit." And then the explosion, right? And then they're both on the ground, and Cap's like, "Put on the suit." And Tony's like, "Yep,
put on the suit." Yep.
I love it, and the chemistry is so good, and just seeing Thor shines in this movie too. I mean, the stuff he has. I mean, and you're right. I mean, that's to Dave's point. I mean, you need Thor there to really understand Thor and Loki's chemistry and what's kind of going on there and why it's kind of such a big deal. I mean, this is kind of our first look too at an Infinity Stone, right? Because we are a part of the Infinity Saga. I mean, we don't really get to see the stone itself, but we know what's happening with the Tesseract and all that, right? So,
right.
Yeah. And so that's kind of our first introduction to why this is going to be the Infinity Saga, in all honesty. And yeah, I mean, in the Battle of New York at the end of this movie has become such a staple for so many properties to come after this, right? And or so many of the projects to come after this. So you need that Battle of New York there. that's become so iconic, and I'll just never forget the goosebumps I had when I got to see these Avengers fighting side by side. That
Oh,
first
dude.
Yeah.
shot where you're seeing
That,
them all fight
yeah,
side by
they're like,
side.
yeah, the camera's like circling, and you just see like all the Avengers just like back to back, just all like in
Getting
one
ready.
circle.
Captain
Yeah, honestly,
America's
dude. Yeah,
strapping up his shield.
yeah,
Yeah,
Iron Man's loading up. Fucking
yeah.
Romanoff is putting in a new clip. Hawkeye's got a fresh arrow out.
And Hulk is just roaring. He's
fucking
like, he's
shaking and
roaring.
roaring. Yeah. Look at
Dude,
my
it's-
dog's freaking out, dude, because he's just seeing how
Like,
psyched up I'm getting
I
about
know.
I mean,
it.
that scene of Hulk stopping that huge alien whale was just with his bare fists was just so
Oh,
incredible,
dude, when he just drops that fucker,
Yeah,
oh
dude,
my
oh my-
god.
I got
Then he just starts
goosebumps.
jumping building into building. It's
I,
when
I
he
got
goes Hulk
goosebumps, bro.
smash. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
well,
Dude,
And
dude,
him
that shit
slamming
was-
Loki back and forth. I'll never forget when that happened, man. Like,
Yeah,
that
bro.
was
Like
insane.
when Iron Man said we have a Hulk, and I'll never forget that scene. Makes me laugh every time because
Yeah.
he's like we have a Hulk,
We have
and
a
Hulk
Hulk.
just comes in and starts WWE slamming him either side like a couple times and just leaving him implanted into the ground.
Yeah, then you get the puny god line, which is voiced by actually
puny god.
it's actually voiced by Lou Ferrigno, who's the original Incredible Hulk in the
Yep.
series. But so that's pretty cool that they
Puny
brought him in
god.
to do that. And
Oh, and then
Lou
the shot,
Ferrigno's also an actor, and I love you, man. By the way,
yeah, that's
And
true.
then you-
Ferrigno
and
is,
then you have
yeah.
this. Then you have the scene of all the Avengers looking down at Loki, all cuffed up and shit like that. That was so iconic too, man. That pic,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
that frame right there is just so iconic.
when you get to revisit it in an Endgame, I love that. I was like,
Oh,
yes, we're
dude.
back here. I love this so much.
Yeah, no, this
It's
movie
incredible.
it really doesn't get much better because I understand Joss Whedon's kind of a controversial name right now, but you cannot deny he directed one hell of a movie. I mean, he,
100%.
he did a phenomenal job with this film, and I'll never understood how he did it. He had an impossible ass task. I really feel that way, and just exceeded at that task and with flying colors. I
And
mean,
it hit the mark too, honestly.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Dude, it really did.
at the time, one of the most successful
Yeah.
movies of all time. At the time it came out, I
Yeah.
mean, really money wise, it broke records, right? Like left
It
and
did,
right.
yeah. And it's still up there in one of the top highest grossing movies of all time.
It
rightly
deservedly
so.
so. I mean,
Yeah,
it's-
exactly.
It's still
Yeah.
really good. I mean, it was such a fun thing to go see. You know, it was an event, right? This is the first time that I could think. I mean, like Deathly Hallows Part 2, which those Harry Potter movies still might have been coming out when this came out. I don't remember, but like that's like one thing I get. Like Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2 are like event films. Those felt like event films, and this was like this really, I think, put the
Oh, yeah.
staple.
Part 2 came out in 2011,
Okay, yeah.
and part 1 came out in 2010. So yeah, right around there at the same time.
Yeah, so but this really, I think, really coined the phrase event film. Like I'm pretty
Yeah.
positive. Like this movie was that, and that's I'll never stop giving it credit for what it managed to do. And now it's funny because crossovers are happening all the time. Like that's
I was gonna say
nothing new anymore.
crossovers just
Every
like,
episode, everything we do.
it's based, bro. It's so based.
And this is the movie that made every movie studio in town, right? Like we
Do
got to
crossovers.
we got to do a cinematic universe. It's where the money's
We have to
at.
do. It's like we have to do crossovers. Like we just gotta go ham on them.
Yeah, but
I mean, look. I mean, DC's doing it now. The MCU doesn't stop doing it. I mean, just so many different companies are now and franchises are doing crossovers now because of what the MCU did with this Avengers movie.
it's lightning in a bottle though, and it's hard to capture again what this first Avengers movie really did.
100%.
And
One thing I'd like to remind you guys of, by the way, is that this movie, prior to the Battle of New York, all the build up to it, this is a fucking hilarious movie.
It's so
I
funny.
remember
It is so
dying
funny.
laughing at points when fucking Iron Man's sitting there trying to shock and poke fucking Bruce Banner, Mark Ruffalo, trying to
Yeah.
get him angry. He's like,
So
what
funny.
the fuck do you think you're doing? Fucking Agent Romanoff, did you miss me? And then he takes over the ship, starts playing shoot to throw, beats the shit out of Loki.
Yeah.
I mean, the humor in this was absolutely excellent. The first meeting of Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America fighting each other, not really understanding what the hell they're all trying to do. When they drop down on Earth, I think it's Thor hits Iron Man with some lightning, and he ends up. I think it's Jarvis goes something like systems at 200%. He's like, well, would you look at that? And then just blasts the shit out of him.
It's
I mean, the humor in this movie was absolutely excellent.
it's so damn funny, and the movie's so fun in
Isn't
general.
isn't that
It's
too?
just
Isn't that too when like Loki's just like staring at the whole fight?
Yeah, that's.
He's like,
I'm listening, brother. That's
yeah,
it's
that's
so funny, man. Yeah.
it's great. And
When did the Thor Hulk fight happen? Which was that this one?
Thor Hulk.
Yeah, when like Hulk's like the hammer like lands on Hulk's hand and he can't like take it out. He can't like lift it up. He's just like stuck there. They had this like little fight scene. I can't remember if that was this one or if it was a different Avengers movie.
I don't remember except for
Ultron?
Ragnarok any of them that had that.
No, they had like a little mini fight and like I can't remember if it was in a building or a ship or what.
Mm. Well,
They had
this is
like,
the one where
little mini
Hulk
fight.
is going after Romanoff. I remember that, and that's kind of a big thing in this because
yeah, trying to. Yeah, that was a fucking nerve-wracking scene
It is.
too, because like in
They do a
that
good
in the
job of it.
environment, Agent Romanoff is barely fucking. That's like the type of thing that you're watching. You're literally like biting down on your lip, like shit, man. She's barely making it away from all these attacks.
yeah, man. I agree. So Jose, was this one a part of your binge, like your overall binge?
Yeah,
then?
we did
Okay.
we did the whole phase one in the binge.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
And this is important too because this is the movie where, at least for me, it was like, well, now I can't miss any of these when they come out, right? Like any of these MCU movies, because now they're all going to be important. You know,
Okay,
this
yeah,
is-
it was in this one. Thor and Hulk did have a fight in this
Did
movie.
they? Okay.
See, I remember. See, I know it wasn't crazy.
Why-
I
don't know why
like
I'm
half
blanking on the scene.
recall it.
Yeah, I'm not remembering it at all.
I
but-
literally see the thumbnail's literally the hammer just laying on Hulk's hand. Like he grabs the because Thor throws the hammer and he grabs it and just like launches him and he can't like lift it up. And so
I
Thor,
kind of
like,
remember it now. Yeah, now I do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
cool scene. The
yeah,
way that
I remember that scene. That was a really cool one.
this gave a lot for Black Widow as well. I think this movie because the way that she plays Loki when he's in the tank in the holding cell,
yeah,
and she
mhm.
goes over there and just does that whole play on him to figure out his plan, and his plan was
Yeah.
to unleash the Hulk. That was cool. I think that's a really well acted scene between Johansson and Hiddleston as well. Like I think they both just play that out really very, very well. And it has, yeah, man. I just can't think of another one in this phase that I'd rather go back to than this movie. And this one
Yeah.
I go back to
I
frequently.
might have to go back to this one sometime soon because I haven't seen the phase one movies in a very long time.
Yeah, this one is so fun, man. I mean, I really,
Oh, 100%.
this is my favorite of all of them, all the phase one movies. Anyway.
Yeah,
Oh
same.
yeah.
Oh
And-
yeah, 100%.
and
Without a shadow of a doubt.
And I still prefer to a lot of the other movies and a lot of the other phases. I still
I was
think
gonna
it
say,
holds
look
on
at
that
that
level.
phase 2, which we'll save for the next video. I like it pretty much better than all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
honestly.
Yeah, phase 2 has some very big missteps, more than phase 1, that's for sure.
It's
but
got some high highs and
It does
it's
have
got
some high
low
highs, though, too,
lows,
so
It
Well,
does, yeah.
we'll kind of talk about that next week. Yeah, so that's going to be
next week.
next week. I can't wait to get to them. But this has been a really fun recap, just reminiscing on these.
100%.
And
It's been
I'm
great
glad-
talking to you guys.
honestly, I'm
about
glad.
this.
I'm glad we're doing this because this is amazing, man. I'm gonna have a lot of fun doing the rest of the phases. Honestly,
yeah, I hope that if anything, we did convince the ones that haven't gone and given this a shot yet to do so, because that's kind of the goal. I think at the end of the day is to kind of educate people on why these movies are great. If there's any point that you guys can make on why somebody should go and watch these, what would you?
because they're
say?
fucking amazing.
Good for
I
you.
mean, it's a franchise that has changed the course of the cinematic universe, the whole viewing experiences of film in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from where they've started to where they are now, it's really shaped, and not just for the MCU, just franchises in general. It's really shaped the way that people go about doing movies. And so, I mean, if you
It
really
is.
want these movies that you're really interested in nowadays, I mean, it all started with these movies, and so just go back and watch them and see exactly why.
It did. It changed the entire course of the way that studios
Exactly.
operate now. You know,
Yeah.
because they everybody wants to be as good as the MCU, right? That's like the point that every studio is trying to get to now is trying
Exactly.
to get as good as Marvel was, and none have been as successful yet. I
No,
mean, we're still
definitely not.
waiting on that, but
Yeah.
and in phase 2, I mean, we'll kind of get into, you know, that's about the time Disney started snatching these guys up, right? And
Yep.
so, and for good reason, did a lot of really good stuff with it back in
Yeah.
the Bob Iger era of Disney, and that's
Mhm.
it was such a great acquisition. And this Avengers movie is probably single-handedly the reason why, because
Yeah, 100%.
the why they were like, okay, we need to invest in the MCU and Feige and let this be a thing. And I think that's pretty damn awesome, man. And yeah, I still can't get over how good the Avengers was at the time. I'll never forget watching it. Like, I really won't. It's one of the movies I'll never forget where I was when I went to see it, watching it in the drive-in. Like that's gonna be something I'm taking with me forever. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I'll never forget that binge that I did of Phase One. Honestly, from then on, I'll say now. From then on, I watched all the other Marvel movies in the theater.
yeah.
But Phase One, I'll never forget. That was like probably one of the best experiences of my life. Honestly,
I mean, I'll never forget like Phase One. Well, this is the other thing too. Like, I'm glad you actually brought up your bench, because if anybody hasn't gone in yet and you have a day off, you could do Phase One in one day. Like, it's doable.
oh,
you know
easily.
What I mean?
Yeah, that's like what 12 hours.
Yeah. So if you have a day
Give
where
or
you got
take.
nothing else going on, that's just put these on and try it out. Like, watch it in either release order or chronologically or whatever. Probably release order would be the easiest way to track it, but
Yeah.
the way that we have it here on the screen would be the way to watch them.
Best way to watch it.
Never the way that we got to experience them, and you'll still be able to piece it all together, and it's so
and once
good,
once you watch them, release order. I've gone and I've seen all the MCU movies both ways, in release order and in chronological. I remember there was a summer where I had like nothing better to do, so I ended up watching the movies in chronological, and it's a completely different experience, and it was an experience that I really enjoyed doing. So
yeah, they're great chronologically too.
Yeah,
No,
for sure. Shut up.
Haram. That's a sin. Don't do it.
You're a sin.
But yeah, man, I think that it's untouchable. This is an untouchable franchise in a lot of ways. Right?
Oh, 100%.
It's done something that's pretty unprecedented. And that's, one of the things is, like, I think a lot of the daunting thing about going into this for a lot of people might be the fact that they haven't read comic books, but you don't have to. That's the beautiful thing about that.
I haven't read any MCU comic books, and
you don't have to.
You don't have to, exactly.
I mean, because they're not of the same universe, right? They only take elements and cherry pick from them to create the stories that they do. And they're made for people who haven't seen them before. Like, they're made for this.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with any franchise that has comics. You don't really have to read the comics to watch the movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like DC, Star Wars, you don't have to read the comics.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you let us know, guys, in the comments below too, like, have you seen the MCU films, and what do you think once you did watch them, or what do you think once you did watch them?
If you've seen them, rank them.
Are you going to watch them is a better question too, now that we've spoken about this, and let us know what you think of these.
Have we convinced you?
Yeah, let us know what you think of these kind of throwbacks too to the earlier phases and things of that nature.
And again, if you have seen them, rank them in the comments, because I'd be interested to see where you guys rank these Phase One movies from the MCU.
Well, let's do that really quick.
I was gonna say let's do that ourselves.
So I'm gonna go. My favorite is Avengers. Second favorite is Iron Man. I'm gonna go Incredible Hulk under that. Then Captain America. Then Iron Man 2. Then Thor. That's where I'm at.
Interesting. Okay.
Jose, what are you looking at here?
I'm gonna do the same. The Avengers first, obviously, because it's the best. Then the first Iron Man. Then Captain America for me. Then the Hulk. And then Thor, and then Iron Man 2.
Oh, Iron Man 2 is your least favorite. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, gotcha. And Dave, where do you rank these?
I'm gonna rank them number 1, Avengers. Number 2, Iron Man. Number 3, I'd give to Iron Man 2.
Oh shit.
Okay. Number 4, I'd give Hulk, and then 5. I'm gonna actually, believe this or not, I'm gonna give 5 to Thor, and then 6 Captain America.
Oh wow.
Different ranking amongst all of us, actually.
Yeah,
Very
honestly,
different amongst all
of
of
us.
us.
Obviously we have the same first. The first 2 are obviously the same between all 3 of us. But there's no argument there. I mean, those first, Avengers and Iron Man are the 2 best in Phase One.
They just held up over time so well.
Oh yeah,
Avengers and Iron Man. So
yeah.
I think that's so essential. But Yeah, I mean, what do we got to look forward to in Phase 2? We got Iron Man 3. We got
We've
Thor: The
got
Dark World.
For
Dark
the
World,
Dark
Captain
World,
America,
I don't know if
Captain
you want to
America,
call it
Winter
Winter
looking
Soldier.
forward
Soldier,
to, but
Yeah.
Guardians of
then
the Galaxy,
Age of Ultron,
and
and
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man, yep. So that's it's a pretty good lineup to talk about next week. Is
Yeah.
Guardians 2 in Phase 2
No,
also?
no, it's
That
not.
was in
No,
Phase 3.
Guardians
Okay.
2 is
that was in Phase
yeah.
3.
Okay, for
There's
some reason I
1, 2,
always
3,
thought
4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
It's like
9,
it's a
10,
third
11,
movie
12.
in.
There's like 13 movies in Phase 3, and then 6 in Phase 4,
yeah. All right. Well, 6 in Phase 4.
or maybe a little more actually, like 7 or 8.
Oh, we
something
got to
like
talk
that.
about TV shows too with Phase 4.
Oh shit. Okay.
So
Well, then that's gonna be like 14.
yeah. So it's gonna be a lot more in Phase 4, I think, than any of them. I'm not
Well,
mistaken.
Phase 2 and Phase 4 are gonna be the longest ones because Phase 2's got, or is it Phase 3 that has no? Phase 2 has Phase 3 has 13 movies.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be Phase 3 and 4 are gonna be some long ones. Jesus.
Yeah. But we'll get to them, and it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna wait for Black Panther 2 before we get to Phase 4, but once we're there,
That's the last one for Phase 4, right?
that's gonna be the last. That's gonna close
Okay.
out Phase 4. So, and then we'll be starting Phase 5. We'll be hopefully talking about those movies individually. Maybe doing some rewatches along the way. We'll probably do a rewatch for Black Panther, I would imagine, before Black Panther 2. I almost feel like we have to do a rewatch episode for the first Black Panther. And yeah, so it'll be fun, guys. Join us on our adventure as we go back through the phases of Marvel, and let us know in the comment section again where you rank them. Have you seen them? Are you going to watch them? We hope that you are at this point. Hopefully we've convinced you. So let us know for sure. Again, so I want to thank my two co-hosts here for joining me today. And Dave, where can people find you?
You could find me at BKingDavid at all social medias, especially on Instagram, Snapchat, and Stereo. BKingDavid.
All right. And also Jose Espinel. Jose, where can people find you?
You can find me on all socials at Type 1 Latino, all lowercase, all together, and on Twitch at twitch.tv/Type 1 Latino.
All right, guys, that'll wrap it all up. I've been Dom Martino. You can find me at Dom_Martino_ on Instagram, on Twitter, and then on Instagram, Dom_Martino_ official. It's right on the screen there. I know I screw it up every time. And then you can find me on Twitter, at least the Interact pages on Twitter and Instagram at Interact official across both platforms. Make sure you go follow us on Spotify if you haven't done so already. If you're listening on Spotify, head over to YouTube, youtube.com/c/Anorax. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave some feedback in the comment section, share this with your friends, hit the bell for notifications. It's much appreciated. And make sure you keep tuning in to Movie Mornings. And I hope everybody has a great night. And we will talk to you guys later.